What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Wolfcryer here with a build guide for the new Patterns of Justice set. This set was added in patch 2.6.7 for the Monk in Diablo 3, and overall it is a pretty powerful set. I personally don't think that it will be able to keep up with the Sun Wuko's version of Tempest Rush or Legacy of Dreams Wave of Light yet, but it is pretty close. And the best thing about this build is the sheer magnitude of the amount of movement speed that comes with it. This is a very, very fast build, able to traverse greater rifts and Nephilim rifts with ease very quickly. While speed farming with this set, I've been able to do a GR75 in about 3 minutes with no Paragon, no gems, and no augments. So right off the bat, it can speed farm GR75s with 800 Paragon and mediocre gems. I can do an 85 in about 3 minutes, all the way up to about a 90 in about the same time. So once you get going in the season, this is going to be a very good build to speed farm with. And with the upcoming Pandemonium buff for Season 19, it is going to be even faster, which I still can't wrap my head around because this build flies through rifts. So we start off with the Patterns of Justice set. We are wearing 5 pieces. I wear the helm, the chest, the pants, the gloves, and the shoulders. And we are cubing a Ring of Royal Grandeur. That's going to give us the 6-piece set bonus for this set. And this set, with the 2-piece set bonus, your Sweeping Wind gains the effect of every rune, and movement speed is increased by 5% per stack of Sweeping Wind. And with the new Vengeful Wind, we are getting 13 stacks, so that is a massive amount of movement speed. For the 4-piece set bonus, while you are attacking with Tempest Rush, you gain 50% damage mitigation, and you also gain 50 spirit as you are attacking, which is pretty awesome during the PTR. This is one area where this build really suffered. It was taking way too much damage. There was no way to mitigate any of that damage without crippling the build by removing other parts of the build and throwing on a ton of damage mitigation. It also suffered heavily from a loss of spirit rather rapidly, and the 4-piece set bonus now fixes that. For the 6-piece bonus, hitting with Tempest Rush while Sweeping Wind is active now increases the size of Sweeping Wind. But not only that, it also increases all damage you deal by 15,000%. That means it's now increasing the damage of both your Tempest Rush and your Sweeping Wind. And you are able to put out decent chunks of damage relatively quickly while flying through the rift. The next set we're using are the Captain Crimson set. We are wearing 2 pieces of this set, the belt and the boots. And like I said, we've got that Ring of Royal Grandeur in the cube, so we get the 3-piece set bonus. This is going to give you some cooldown reduction, it's going to give you some reduced resource cost, and it's going to grant you a damage bonus based off your cooldown and damage mitigation based off of your reduced resource cost. Captain Crimson's was one of the best things they added last season to Diablo 3. With all the changes to this set and all guilds and sages, I think they did a really good job with Season 18, and this is one of the pieces of gear that's going to be on a lot of builds nowadays. Another piece of gear that we're running with is Caesar's Memento. This is going to increase the damage of your Tempest Rush by up to 800% after you hit them with a blind, stun, or freeze. And we are going to be doing that utilizing our blind. Plus, we get the pull from the Cyclone Strike that is automatically activated whenever we use Tempest Rush, thanks to the one Kihm Lau, which we'll get to in just a second. But this is a very good piece of gear, especially since that new update to the Patterns of Justice set increases your Tempest Rush damage. These are the best in slot for your bracers. For your weapons, first up we've got Wan Kihm Lau with that new legendary affix. When you hit with Tempest Rush, you automatically activate Cyclone Strike. That's going to pull all the mobs towards you, and this now also increases the damage of Tempest Rush and Cyclone Strike. So adding a ton more damage to your build, especially with that Tempest Rush. And the fact that it pulls enemies towards you as you are going through the rift is pretty awesome and Very, very helpful while you're speed farming, and it's pretty decent while you're going through the rifts for pushing greater rifts. So overall, this is a very important piece of gear. Then we've got the brand new Vengeful Wind, which is going to increase your sweeping stack count by 10. The old version of this used to max your sweeping wind stacks at 10. Now you can get up to 13 stacks of sweeping wind. It's going to increase your damage for your sweeping wind quite significantly. And you also gain a damage bonus for Sweeping Wind itself with this, up to 800%. For one of your rings, I am using an Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, which is going to allow your skills to come off cooldown faster as long as you are spending resource and attacking, and Tempest Rush does that all the time. So this is constantly in effect. This is what's going to allow your Epiphany to be active at all times. Then I'm using Convention of Elements, which is going to rotate through all of the elements available to the monk. And when it lands on cold, you are going to be doing a ton more damage. This is going to buff your damage by up to 200%. So very good to have. You can swap this one out for Unity if you're struggling to stay alive. That is a very viable option. If you are speed farming, you can also swap this out for something like a Stone of Jordan if you wish, and try to get some cold damage on that and some good stats so you're not wasting time waiting for your cold rotation. So that is a viable option when you are speed farming. And the last piece of gear that we're looking at here is the Flavor of Time in your amulet slot. This is going to allow you to double the length of time that you have pylons activated, and can be really helpful during a rift. I mean, who doesn't love double conduit, double power? This is pretty awesome to have with this build. You can swap this out for Squirt's Necklace. That is a completely viable option, but I personally prefer Flavor of Time. It's just how I play the build. All of my guides are just that. They're guides. Maybe you can come up with something that works better for you. I think that that's the cool thing about Diablo 3 is there's always a way to try to min-max for each individual player while still performing the same build for the most part. In your cube, you are using Balance, which is going to increase the damage of your Tempest Rush by 600% and give Tempest Rush 100% critical hit chance if you are attacking 3 or fewer enemies. Big damage bonus for Tempest Rush. You want that in the cube. Next up, I use Mantle of Channeling, which is going to increase your damage and increase your damage mitigation whenever you are channeling, and you are going to be channeling pretty much 100% of the time with your Tempest Rush skill. So very good to have. You can, if you are struggling once again with some damage mitigation, you can swap that out for Lefebvre's Soliloquy, which is going to give you a 50% damage reduction as you are going through the rift because you are constantly activating Cyclone Strike. So that is a viable option. I just personally prefer Mantle of Channeling with this build. And then, like I said, we use Ring of Royal Grandeur in the jewelry slot in the cube just so that we can gain the set bonuses of your Patterns of Justice set and your Crimson set. So very important to have there, especially if you are running Crimsons, you are going to need a Ring of Royal Grandeur. So that takes care of all the gear slots. Let's talk about the gems. I use Bane of the Stricken if I am pushing. If I am speed farming, I swap that out for either Wreath of Lightning for even more movement speed, which is absolutely ridiculous, or I use something like Bane of the Powerful because I am killing elites relatively quickly, so that's going to actually increase my damage. So I'd say that's up to you, but if you are pushing greater rifts, Bane of the Stricken is absolutely necessary. I then use the Teguk gem, which is going to increase your damage while you are channeling. You gain a certain percentage for 1.5 seconds, and this stacks up to 10 times. You also gain a 2% increased armor for every stack that you have, so up to 20% increased armor. So it's a very good damage gem as well as offering a little bit of damage mitigation. Then I am using Bane of the Trapped, which is going to increase your damage against enemies affected by control impairing effects. And at rank 25, this actually becomes its own control impairing effect. Plus you've got Cyclone Strike going off all the time. So enemies in the area are always affected by this gem. So it's a very good high damage dealing gem to have. For gems in the build, I use diamonds in everything, resistances on your chest and legs, and then you have cooldown reduction in your helm, and that's going to actually buff up your damage and make sure that Epiphany is always available. For your skills, I am using Epiphany Desert Shroud. This is going to give you 50% damage reduction as long as this is active, and between all the cooldown that you have and your Obsidian Ring, this is going to be active 100% pretty much. Next up, we've got Blinding Flash, Crippling Light. This is going to blind enemies in the area. It's going to trigger your Caesar's Memento if enemies aren't already affected by it by your Cyclone Strike and your Tempest Rush, so this is going to bump up your damage quite a bit with TR. And I use Blinding Light for the 5 seconds of damage reduction. You can use Faith in the Light instead if you want to increase your damage a little bit with this skill, but one of those two is probably best in slot for that blind. Then I'm using Mantra of Salvation Agility. This is going to give you some resistances as well as dodge chance. If I am speed farming, however, I am using Mantra of Conviction Annihilation, and that's going to give me a 30% movement speed anytime I kill an enemy that is affected by it. So it's going to give me a big bump in movement speed. I like how fast this build goes. That's why I'm combining Mantra of Annihilation, Wreath of Lightning, as well as the Patterns of Justice set, and I can't wait to see how fast this thing is once that Pandemonium buff goes live in Season 19. This thing flies through rifts, especially if you're speed farming with it. Then I'm using Sweeping Wind, Master of Wind. It doesn't matter which rune you pick because you get all runes based on your Patterns of Justice set. This is very important to keep active so that you are constantly putting out your damage. Without this active, you are losing all of your Sweeping Wind damage. Then I'm using Serenity Ascension, which is going to give me pretty much 4 seconds of invulnerability should I run into a problem in a Greater Rift and I need to make sure that I do not take damage. Maybe my health's falling low. Maybe there's a bunch of grotesques about to pop. I can go ahead and pop this and avoid damage for 4 seconds. So very useful skill to have. I haven't really been able to find anything else to put here that would benefit me better than Serenity. So it's pretty good to have on your bar. And then the last skill we're using is Tempest Rush Flurry. This is going to be the cold base rune for your Tempest Rush. It's going to deal a ton of damage as you are going through the rift, especially once you roll around to cold on your Convention of Elements. The problem with this set compared to the Sun Wuko's version is for some reason this bounces you out of Tempest Rush every so often, so you don't always get the benefit of this secondary on Flurry, but it is a pretty decent skill to have. Cold seems to work the best for me that I've found so far. For your passives, I'm using Harmony, which is going to give you extra resistances based on your secondary resistances on your gear. You gain 40% of your secondary resistances as all resistance, so that's pretty good to have. But you got to make sure that a lot of your gear has a secondary res on it, because otherwise it is pointless to actually have this. Next up, I'm using Beacon of Yitar, 20% cooldown. We're using Captain Crimson's and we're using Epiphany, so we want to make sure both of these are gaining this benefit. Then I'm using Guardian's Path. That's going to give us a little bit more dodge chance because we are dual wielding with this build. You could use Resolve here as another way to mitigate a little bit of damage. Either or works, but I like the dodge chance. And then I use near-death experience if I am pushing. That's going to save me from death every now and then. But if I am speed farming in a rift, I am going to change this to fleet-footed, which is going to be giving me another 10% additional movement speed. This build, I've just been trying to figure out ways to increase its movement speed massively. I'm sure there's a couple things that I could do a little bit more and really bump up the movement speed in this build, but I don't think I need much more, especially once that Pandemonium buff goes live. It's going to be crazy fast, and I'm actually looking forward to this set in the upcoming season. But as always, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. I always greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let me know down in that comment section down below your thoughts on the Patterns of Justice set, and your thoughts on this build guide. And once again, thank you so very much for all the support, and you all have a fantastic day. Peace.